for anybody moving down here, you are starting a business, whether you like it or not, which means you have to have some magnitude of business acumen, definitely a good sales approach. And that's what I think made you rich, is that you understood all that. You knew you were somewhat of a master salesman. You could back it up. You had, you didn't have the clout yet. You only had the clout coming from Dallas and what you did, but you certainly had the education, but you had you had a salesmanship to you. You know what I mean? And that made a big difference. So a lot of these people that are coming in, you got to do a lot of stuff. You got to spread yourself thin. How many bands did you play in 1 year that didn't have a scheduling conflict?
29.
29 bands. What year was that?
1999.
Right. You remember the year?
Oh, yeah.
You were playing the lottery.
Totally playing.
Right.
27 of those acts do not exist anymore.
But you still had you can't win if you don't play.
This is the Rich Redmond Show.
What's up, folks? Yep, it's that time. It's time for another exciting episode of the Rich Redmond Show, where we talk about things like music, motivation, success, drummers. We love the drummers. They're everywhere. They're all over Nashville. This used to be Guitar Town. Now it's Drum Town. Everybody's coming from New York, LA. They're coming from all the schools all across the nation, and they know that they can buy land here. They can put their kids through school, and they can make a living playing the drums. And we're going to talk to a great drummer today. But first, I want to catch up with Jim McCarthy, JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com.
Hello.
Jim, how was your holidays, buddy?
It was busy. I take that back. Maybe it wasn't so busy. It was relaxing.
Well, you got to pull the plug a little bit.
Yeah.
We got to smoke a cigar recently. Today's guest bought us some cigars, which is,
look at that.
No one has done that. I'm feeling very Mark Maron right now because he's always bragging about how people bring him gifts. This is the first gift that we have gotten on the show. Oh my God.
No, we had the keyboard player. He brought us some gifts too. Ray Luzier brought us some coffee.
Oh, yeah, some nice coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a grinder, bean grinder. So then I gave the coffee to John Hull on the road.
Brother Paul.
Brother Paul is always... Actually, Brother Paul and his band, the Waterboys, just had a big write-up in Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah.
They put out this amazing, conceptual album that took 5 years to make, and the critics are all raving about it. So
what an amazing person.
Shout out to Brother Paul.
So positive.
So positive. And I still have his, you know how he was really into tea?
Yeah, he brewed his own tea.
I still have his teapot.
I had him on my podcast, the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, mmtbp.com. Check it out. It's actually, he was on my podcast.
Jim, you're a promosexual.
He did the same exact thing.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, this is that time of year in Nashville where the stores are empty. Everyone is robbed of milk and water and
Everyone's
bread.
making French toast tomorrow, apparently.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. It's that time. Everything's getting salted. And it's also, if you're the kind of person that gets fever blisters, maybe you kissed the wrong person in college and this thing just keeps following you around. I'm sporting a major one right now. So if you can't see it, it's
you ever hear of the concept of TMI?
I just kissed the wrong person somewhere along the way. Jim, hey, this is a great drummer. This is like timing is, you know what the secret to comedy is, Jim?
Timing.
Where's the splash symbol? So our friend, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, he graduated with a music business degree from Capital University. He is a working drummer. I mean, actually, he has a podcast called the Working Drummer Podcast. He's played all over the 50 states. He's played all the cool spots in Nashville, the Ryman, the Grand Ole Opry, all the hipster rock and roll rooms. He's played with guys like Mark Selby, Eddie Raven, Billy Dean. We're talking Michelle Wright, Julie Roberts. Recently, the most current gig, he's been playing with the frontman of country, which is Larry Stewart of Restless Heart, Richie McDonald of Lone Star, you know Richie, our friend Tim Rushlow of Little Texas, and what else do I want to brag? He works with producers like Eric Fritz, Jim Riley, we have that in common, great people, and his podcast, the Working Drummer Podcast, workingdrummer.net, started in 2015. He has a sidekick, a co-host, Zach Albetta. He does an amazing job, and today is very special because they're celebrating 500 episodes. Our friend, Matt Crouse.
Rich.
What's up, buddy?
What an intro.
Man, good to see you.
Yeah, man. Oh, he's got some new sounds over there.
Oh, they're not new.
Oh.
I just never use them.
Jim finally labeled the buttons. Yeah. Toilet flush.
Oh, remember some of the old ones we had?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. The pooping and puking.
Yeah, you know, we're children in adult skin.
That's great. I'm feeling inspired. You know, we were trying to go organic and create our own sounds, but I didn't know.
1, 2. So
if you
thank
want
you
that
for the
sound
cigars, man.
You have to extend a thank by proxy to Kevin Rapillo, Angela Lisi, our friend Chad Melchert, great Canadian drummer.
Good sonar guy,
and I'm trying to think of
these are all guests on your podcast.
Guests on our podcast that have brought. Justin Amaral was very kind, brought some wonderful gifts that I'm just blown away by their kindness, and it's one of those things that you learn that you're like, it sometimes only takes that one time to make a really good impression.
Yeah.
I was in a band that worked with an investor, and he sat down and he told us, listen, after you do this gig, maybe take a picture with the person and then develop the film, put it in a frame, sign it. Thanks so much for hiring us. Send it off with a letter.
Nice.
And we're all sitting there going, what?
Dude.
Yeah.
That crazy?
It's those relationships. Because this business,
yeah, but that was
was
just very thoughtful, and you brought us some coffee, some black coffee, which is great. Thank you so much.
Is there a possibility to make a good second, like a bad first impression, but have an ability to make a better impression on the second round? You believe in that?
I believe that it's always best to do it on the first time around because that is ingrained in people's minds, but. I think a lot of people understand that everyone has a bad day, and maybe you caught that person on a bad day.
Yeah.
Here's the other funny thing to your point that you just said about like somebody sending you a special gift, which made an indelible imprint in your mind. Check this out. So I keep this card behind me, right? It's a picture of me.
That is the most handsome picture of you.
Thank you. Yes. Because, as we get older, it's much tougher to take good pictures of ourselves. And I was sitting in a hotel room. We were going for orientation at my daughter's college at UTC.
Yeah.
And I looked up, I was getting some work done. And I looked up in the mirror from the laptop and I'm like, I actually kind of look good. Let me see if I could take a picture of it like that. And I put up a thing on Facebook talking about like, as you get older, you just you're not in love with some of the pictures you take as you get older and older. I'm at least me. It's probably because of the weight, but I'm working on it. And this one was a great picture. And I just kind of put up a post about it, got a lot of cool comments. This guy
printed it out.
I'm not even in his industry.
Yeah.
He does like F&I training for the car business. I pray that your special day brings an abundance of happiness. This is my birthday card. He went and sent me a birthday card. Peace and true joy to you today and always. Have a happy birthday, my friend. Velko Tukiev. So Velko, kudos to you.
Yeah.
It's sitting on my desk now.
Yeah.
It's like, I will never, it's like, dude, that's awesome.
I need to start being more super thoughtful like that, because, we have our companies, our company relationships. So we meet everybody at the NAMM show. And next thing you know, you're endorsing a drum company or something. And you want, at the holidays, you might want to send them some Harry and David cookies or pears or something. But a lot of times it's like, it's a Starbucks card. You know what I mean? It's just like, let's just cover our bases. I can buy everybody everything right now at this counter, but it's not very thoughtful. I mean, this is thoughtful.
Thank you. And also I had lunch with a friend of mine years ago, and it was our first time meeting, and he sent me a handwritten thank you.
Yeah.
That showed up at my house.
Wow.
Nice.
And I've held on to that.
It makes an impression.
Yeah.
Because somebody put effort into that.
Yeah.
It's
really
crazy.
amazing.
You know what I used to do? And this is some shame on me. I guess things have either gotten busier or I've gotten lazier. Is that every time I would do a drum clinic, I would write a handwritten thank you card and I would send it to the store.
So you are thoughtful. Come on, give yourself some
used
credit.
to do it, and now just like it's like a text. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'll see you next time. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just a product of the times we're living in.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's easy to really stand out because if you do go analog, you can certainly make an impression.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's so many times I have got two young adult sons.
How old are they now?
They're 19 and 22.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't look old enough to
That's
have
a lot of cool testosterone in the house, man.
It is, but they're mostly out of the house and one's getting married. But anyways, I remind them, I said, it doesn't take much these days to stand out.
really
because
Ain't that the
holding a
truth?
door, looking, not staring at your phone, but paying attention when other
using
people.
correct grammar and just English in a text message and not text speak. I'm trying to break my kids of that.
Not LUVU.
Or oh, you know what drives me nuts? When people refer to people as PPL, pupple.
Oh, yeah.
It drives me up a wall. Pupple.
All those little things. And I think that I see it paying off in the little things that they do.
So, man, you're a world-class drummer. You've been here 26 years. You're in the trenches. Everybody knows Nashville is, a place where you come to move the career forward. It's New York, it's LA, or it's Nashville. Of course, I always talk about the tertiary markets. Those are great. Your Austins, your Miamis, your Seattles. They have great music scenes. But really, there's like three big ones. And Nashville is becoming the favorite right now, where it's like, wow, I just moved here to Spring Hill, Tennessee. I used to live right by you. Was this from our old neighborhood Starbucks?
Yes. Zipper's Corner.
So convenient.
Yes.
So convenient. But you can, for the moment, you could buy a home here and there's dirt but at the same time, we could challenge ourselves. There's classical music here. There's rock and roll music here. There's contemporary Christian, all types of country and Western music. Buses are leaving this town every single day. Songs are being written right now. It was a game changer for you to move here, right? As far as like what you were aspiring to do and what you did it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it wasn't moving to Nashville. It was moving out of Columbus.
Right.
It was moving away from home.
Yeah.
Because as we were discussing off air before we started, I went to college, studied at a university level in my hometown.
Capital University with Bob Breithaupt, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob, because I saw Bob last two PASICs ago.
Yeah.
Because I went to one of those Yamaha Sounds of Summer drum set camps, and it was Ed Soph, Bob, and Steve Houghton.
They used to do that every summer at Capital University.
Every summer, yeah.
And when I worked for Bob one summer, he's like, listen, if you just want to hang out at some of the sessions while you're working for me, we'll, do that. That's how I afforded to kind of hang out.
Yeah. So we both kind of went to. Right. Yeah.
Right. And there was one other, Ed Soph.
Ed Soph and Steve Houghton. Steve Houghton, that was where Steve Houghton was like, hey, kid, your up-tempo swing, you got to like double down on that. That's an Achilles heel. Like, it was great. He's just cut to the point. Your reading's great. Style's great. You just get that going here. I was like, all right, thanks, Steve.
Yeah. And Columbus is another one of those towns with the talent is amazing. I was so inspired by so many of the musicians and the drummers that were there.
Yeah.
I also, after college, started working at Columbus Pro Percussion.
Nice.
Jim Rupp's shop. And
What's up,
Bob was
Jim?
part owner.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
At the time.
Okay, yeah.
Not anymore, but so I got to meet and got to know all these players that I was aspiring to be more like. And when you're a kid, you think all you got to do is get good and you'll be successful. Well, we know that's not true.
Is it? Yeah.
And it was more profound to me when I saw some of my favorite players struggling to buy sticks.
Whoa.
And I had friends that had moved to Nashville and were saying, when are you coming down? When are you coming down? Mid to late 90s, they were here. They were doing it. Listen, musicians are treated with respect. It's a legit vocation. I don't know. I mean, I was feeling comfortable. I was still in my hometown. I knew the lay of the land. I was getting to know the community. I was playing with so many people. I was subbing for my heroes.
Yeah.
And I was working at a rock band, pop band, Deadhead band,
Brazilian
band,
Fusion,
playing in a 22-piece big band
Nothing
every
like it.
Monday night.
Nothing like it.
With my former teacher.
Yeah.
But learning more in that moment than I did when I was in school.
In an academic environment, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had more to do.
Yeah.
And then my relationship with my now wife was growing, and it's like there was just a lot going on. I wasn't ready to go. Meanwhile, one of my high school friends, Jay DeMarcus, had moved down here.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went to a vocational school together.
He's such a rascal.
He studied
Good
piano and bass, and he was in a Christian rock band, and he's like, come play drums with us. And so I played in that band for a little while. And then right out of high school, he was like, I'm going to Nashville. And I'm like, what? You're supposed to go to college. That's what you do after high school.
He's like, not me.
Yeah, a lot of my friends. Yeah, and just that was just hardwired in me to do that, which I'm still very grateful that I did. So Jay was one of those people. So Nashville had a draw for all the organic reasons, all those reasons.
You knew people. You knew that it would be a respected thing. It didn't have the scariness of hailing taxis, learning the subway system, living on the 405. And,
yes.
And that makes sense. But I could totally relate to that because when I was in Dallas, kind of my finishing school was in Denton, and you're getting all sorts of academic experience. And then, it's like me and Jim Riley and Carlock and Luke Adams and Blair Sinton, all of us, we would work in Dallas. And Dallas had such a beautiful, robust scene. It was like, well, I want to play in that fusion band, and I want to play in that. And I would play in a 22-piece big band on Monday nights, and then another one on Tuesday nights. And it was like my finishing school. I was like, I really want to check this box.
Yep.
And then I'll make this move. So I was 26 when I moved here and quickly turned 27. And my first person that I saw and met here was Jim Riley.
Wow.
Who was your first person that when you moved here, did you run into somebody at the Lowe's or the Starbucks or who was the first hand you shook that?
Oh my gosh.
Who was the first person you networked with?
Yeah, man.
Right.
Well, I think I needed to start working and paying rent because I was still traveling from Nashville to Columbus, which is a 7-hour drive.
Yeah.
And still playing with some of the bands in Columbus and then coming back and then putting my rent on my credit card and just awful stuff.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Another friend, Josh Berkheimer, who's a elementary school friend from Columbus that I've known longer than anybody alive right now.
I haven't talked to Josh in forever. Is he still at it?
He's great.
Okay.
Yeah, he's back in town and just, staying really busy. And but I needed a job, and I think I went to a temp agency and worked in an office for like 2 weeks. And
office space, the real office space.
The real office. I mean, I did the job for 2 weeks before I got offered the job at Forks Drum Closet.
All right, Gary.
So it was an easy transition. Gary knew Jim. One of their key employees was leaving, also named Matt. It was a easy fit.
Yeah.
But I quickly learned Nashville is not Columbus. And from a retail point of view, you have touring professionals, a lot with endorsements. You don't have the weekend warriors. You don't have the people with real jobs. Selling in Columbus at Columbus Pro Percussion was easy. I was probably the worst salesman at Forks Drum Closet.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of those guys to this day still make fun of me and laugh at the missed opportunities.
Why did they think that?
Well, I think someone would come in and say, I think I need a new pedal. And I'd take it, and my Jim Rupp sensibility would be like, well, let's take a look at this. Oh, well, you just need a new spring, and let's clean this and oil it up. And there, you spend $5 and off you go.
Oh, instead of taking advantage of the opportunity, you just figured I would just.
Yeah. And Gary's like, what are you doing?
You got to.
But Forks does have a beautiful repair department.
They do.
And I'm being somewhat hyperbolic, but at the same time, they weren't angry. They were just like, man, you could have.
Is there training? Does Gary put you through like a day or something where it's like, this is sales 101?
It was loosey-goosey, where Columbus Percussion, it's like, well, we have these seminars through NAMM. We're going to send you guys off to do this. I was the president of the Student Association of NAMM because of my degree in music business. Yeah. So I was doing that. I was not focused on working in the retail industry or doing music business per se. I wanted to be a player, which is why I moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So, love Forks, love Gary, and we got to a point where I was getting more and more calls to do gigs and could not sustain the workload he needed from me.
And what year was this?
2000 to 2001.
Okay.
I think.
Before my time.
Yeah. And so he's like, you need to make a choice. Either I need you here or can't have you working here. And I was like, Gary, thanks for the opportunity. I moved down here to play.
Yeah.
And we had, probably a day or two where we were just not happy with each other. And then we're like quickly reestablished.
I'll come back and shop here, Because, that was around the time when, I'm sure I would come in and chat with you
where
all the
I met
time.
you.
Yeah, because now that original Gary he was so forward thinking. It really did start as a drum closet, and then he was able to open the closet up a little bit more, and then he got that space next to Corner Music, which is now a high dollar athleisure Viore store.
So bougie.
Yeah, I mean it is the best athleisure. If you like Lululemon, you will love Viore. Anyways,
Is it kind of like a knockoff brand, or is it the superior brand, the Lululemon?
it's a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more expensive.
Does it have the va-va-voom?
With the ladies?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but actually their men's line is nice. So if you want like nice workout pants that like taper and make you feel sexy, you go and you drop the money.
Shows
Well, that's
the,
why we hung
loose
out at the
knuckle.
Y, because you had all the
You and I would always see each other at the Y, and at the YMCA on Old Hickory Boulevard, and I miss it. They closed it down.
I miss it too.
It was so great because there was it was like an older community that would go there,
Yeah.
and a lot of times there would be no one there, and you and I would just have the run of the place. And I realized you were a serious, serious about maintaining your playing career and staying healthy and wanting to be healthy for the rest of your life, because you weren't doing all these just like standard, all right, let's do some squats, we're doing do some burpees, I'm out of here. You were doing all sorts of things with kettlebells and stretching and all that stuff to,
Yeah.
Stretching is like the elixir for age, right?
do it every day.
Yeah, the science is still out.
Yeah.
We just can't slow it down.
Right.
I mean, it totally. And again, at Forks, when I was there, that's where I met people like you.
Yeah.
And drummer Jim Riley.
Yeah.
And
Such a hub.
yeah, and I'm trying to think of
Trey Gray.
Trey Gray.
Yeah.
We became close there. And I got to know so much about what country music was. I knew nothing about. I knew Garth Brooks and Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers was.
Yeah.
But I just knew there was something about Nashville that could offer that. So I'm trying to think, players like Greg Morrow, who, very unassuming.
So quiet.
Yeah, and just sweet. And I'm like, wait a minute. I now know who this is. This guy's a badass. But his personality is so sweet. That's the key. I just got to be really nice and sweet to everyone, and they'll think that I'm great.
But the funny thing is, to your point, and I was when you brought it up before about your selling ability, that's a sales technique. You asking, the only thing I would qualify, because I spent some time in sales, your integrous nature came out. You know what I mean? That's a relationship builder. That I know this guy's not going to take advantage of me.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only thing I would say before that, be like, okay, are you interested in getting a new pedal, or you just want to fix the old one?
Yeah.
That would be a good question to ask going into it. But I mean, that approach is very relational, the way you went about it.
And I don't want to take anything away from what Gary...
No, absolutely. You still got to be a businessman.
Yeah.
But if you were in there for the long haul, you would have built up a book of business.
As did Gary and Melissa.
Right.
Because it was based on that. And I had that scenario with Ben Caesar early on when I first met him.
Yeah.
And as a salesman, helping him find a new double pedal and a new company. And then like, man, I like this guy, hearing him try out pedals. I'm like, wait, whoa, who does he play with? This is great.
Yeah.
And then expanding those little ways of expanding my world and better understanding what Nashville was and is.
Yeah.
But Nashville was in 2000, 2001, my new world. Where do I fit? I'm not the kind of medium fish in a small town. I'm a very small fish in a big town. And how do I manage that?
And now you're a big fish in a little big town. You really are. I mean, you're a big fish. I mean, somebody needs a drummer, your name's going to be on the list. That's the thing, is you got to get on the list.
Right.
And now you're on the list. You put in 26 years. You should be on the list. Thank God. That's amazing. So so you got to meet a lot of the tastemakers and the guys that were doing it.
Totally. Totally.
And so before I came, I kind of knew, all right, you got to get to know Greg Morrow, Chad Cromwell, Lonnie Wilson, Eddie Bears. There's a Shannon Forrest kid, Paul Lime, Steve Brewster's doing the Christians. Like, where are these guys? Where do they hang out? Can I shake their hand? And then you realize, well, I could be a fly on the wall. I can ask them questions, but they're not necessarily going to get me work. I'm going to have to get work from band leaders, bass players, keyboard players, contractors.
They could show you the way.
Totally.
Yeah.
But
at least, to your credit, and this came up in a recent conversation on a podcast that I produce, the people coming to town now, especially in the songwriting arena, they don't seem to have a reverence for those who came before them, understanding that they're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Three
right?
chords and the truth. Yeah.
No,
like
but
Harlan Howard.
apparently that's a thing now. Like they have no idea who people are. The people that wrote the biggies, that they're trying to.
You're right. I mean, I think it's
Is that the same?
it's more nuanced than that, because I know you have people that reach out to you and say, Rich, I don't know if you know who I am, but I'd love to have coffee and meet.
A river of coffee.
I had that meeting with a great young drummer about a month ago.
Yeah.
And one of his inspirations was you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there are young people that are, finding, but I do have conversations with people and they're like, I don't know who that is.
Wow.
Well,
you mean like what, Eddie Bears? You mentioned Eddie Bears or something like that?
No, it wasn't Eddie, but it could have been even somebody like Greg Morrow or somebody like that.
Jim McCarthy. That's understandable. So,
but I mean,
Jim played in Connecticut White Bread, though. I mean, that's good.
I mean, you can't deny that.
That is a good band.
I mean, that's
I also wonder if access to information is so easy now.
There's no excuse for it these days.
But I'm wondering if that would be the excuse, is like I can access everything I need to know through a podcast, through YouTube interviews, through all this stuff, where if you wanted to find something out, even as simple as how to get from point A to point B, you had to pull out a map. You had to do, we're from that generation. So not to be the old guy on the lawn, but how do you kind of repurpose those skills in a way that's useful?
Sure. Is there a reverence for the amount of access to, again, standing on the shoulders of giants, those giants that are in town? Like when I first moved here, it was for radio and moved here in 2005, having a heavy drumming background once upon a time. I would go to Forks and see, hey, you can get lessons from Chester Thompson and Johnny Rabb. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right. I know.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And how do you have that reverence, but how do you make that transition from, it's time for me to go. Right. It's time for me to work professionally and, share the space or have my gig as well.
Yeah.
That reverence has never gone away.
Yeah.
If anything, it remains. And after doing the podcast, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I've learned that that reverence is transferable to my peers, to younger players that I feel inspired by, and kind of see it as a community that gives me more peace of mind, as opposed to where do I fit? How will people see me?
And the competitive
competitive nature that is inherent, and shedding that so that you can then get back to what inspired you to pick up the sticks.
Well, as we know, the drum community is the best. Back in the day, when I moved here.
Said. All right, thanks. Bye.
See, I was going to say that, I'd go to the Great Escape, and it was like a comic book store, but it also had used records and tapes, and I would just get, Tammy Wynette's greatest hits and Merle Haggard's greatest hits and Gene Watson's greatest hits. And so that's how I started to learn the vernacular of country music. And then we could look at the actual written credits and go, oh yeah, Jerry Croon. Oh, Tommy Wells. Oh my God. Oh, Eddie Bears. And then I learned these names and I would just keep trying to buy records. Now, if you have $13 a month for Spotify, you have all the world's music at your fingertips. So then you could just Google top Nashville session recording drummers. Boom, it comes up. Those are all the names. You can go to Drummer World, right? You can read about the guy. Then you could go to their allmusic.com. You could look at their discography. Then you could start to go on Spotify and put playlists together by style, by artist, by tempo, or by drummer. I was like, hey, so all the kids that come and study with me, I'm like, hey, put together an Eddie Bears playlist, a Lonnie Wilson playlist. Now you're covering 80s, you're covering 90s, the early 2000s. And you got these playlists, and find out what makes these drummers ticks. Do they like high pitched snare drums? Do they program loops a lot? What's their vibe and their swagger? And why does Lonnie Wilson never play the ride cymbal? And you know what I mean? But there's a lot of crashes, and everybody has this thing that they brought to the table,
right?
Which is so cool.
And I think you're making me realize and telling us that about what inspired me to start the podcast, because when I was working retail at Columbus or in Nashville, I had this really organic way of discovering who these players were, and then using that as a launching point to then go down those rabbit holes. And, it's like, oh, so this is Greg Morrow. He played on that Montgomery Gentry record of all those songs that I have to learn for this
Yeah,
weekend.
this is my town. Right?
Yeah. And it's like, as I'm learning those songs for gigs and writing charts, I'm like, wow, or when I was one of my first big musical artist gigs was Mark Selby.
Yeah.
And
he was kind of like a rocker.
Yeah, for sure. But we were, opening up for country artists and doing different things like that. And Chad Cromwell played on his record that we were touring on. Yeah. And so I got to dig deep into that, his style, his approach, his sound, and then talk to Mark about that experience. What does he do? And then meet him personally. So when I left that, I missed that interaction, that actual natural, as opposed to just like turning on YouTube or whatever and kind of like, no, I need to know more. Not because I'm looking for gigs from drummers, but like, how do I stay dialed in to the vernacular, to, Steve Brewster is such a great example of a drummer that's been on the scene for decades.
Yeah.
And a seasoned player, but knows that he has to stay current with drum tones, sounds, styles, approaches, because he's in the studio and young producers, young songwriters are going to be like, okay, here's the song, let's go. And he's going to be like, I know what to do for this, as opposed to, well, this is what we used to do, and this is how we did it, and this is how I did it.
Yeah.
He knows that doesn't fly.
Yep.
He's a perfect example of that. And so that, I don't know, again, drumming community, the best.
Yeah.
And we're in a practice, right? Like a doctor, like a lawyer. It's forever.
Yeah.
It will continue to be, that type of thing.
Totally. And now I'm sure you have your Nashville family tree where it's like this begot that. So you're working with Mark Selby, and then maybe you get a call from Billy Dean, and you're working with Michelle Wright, and you're touring Canada, and maybe you're playing with Julie Roberts, and you get to play the Grand Ole Opry. Now this last gig that you did for a while, frontman of country music, that had to be fun. Tell us about that experiment, because those are three iconic voices.
Yeah. So again, that all stems. I love the way you refer to it as the family tree, and I can see the base of it. And then it branches off. You do a gig, you meet somebody, you really connect, and it branches off. And then on a next gig, you meet somebody else. So one of the scenes that I've been in and out of in the 25, 26 years has been Lower Broad, like so many people. I don't live down there. Yeah. There's been moments where I've gone 5-6 years without stepping foot down there. Mm-hmm. But in working down there with players that I adore, I met a bass player whose close friend was a guitar player who was really close with Larry and did a bunch of stuff with Restless Heart. Mm-hmm. And so he was starting to form a core band that would go out and support these guys doing solo or duo acts. So we did a Tim Rushlow show. Yeah. We did, Larry and Richie together. We did those. And then they're like, over time, it started to get more and more, and they're like, okay, they're going to combine, and we're going to do
a super corporate band.
Call it the Frontmen of Country. So I was on the ground floor of that.
Yeah.
And so it was exciting, but I had just left a road gig after,
Oh, is this the Savannah Jack Band?
Savannah Jack Band. Yeah. After 15 years, feeling good about working from home, doing more home studio stuff.
Okay.
Building my network again, diversifying my portfolio, if you will.
You got to make sure you have gold, and you got to have art. Gold bars and art.
That's right. And Doge. No.
And crypto.
Were you in the crypto?
No.
You're not? Oh, okay.
I got to get in the game, man.
I think I have some Doge somewhere on a lost app.
Oh, you might want to find that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So especially after tomorrow when Snowmageddon hits. Anyways, I found myself. We're going to Texas, and it was all fun and exciting the way it is. I'm back on a bus, but before I get to that point, I can say lead singers can be tough. They can be great. Yeah. They can be the worst.
Tim knows what he wants.
Yeah,
he'll tell you.
Well, you got 3 lead singers.
Yeah,
you got 3. You're like, this could be a nightmare. I think they canceled each other out. They were the sweetest guys to work for.
Nice.
Yeah.
And gave me a lot of power and control from the drum throne.
Nice.
And so I'm like, this is record tempo. Do we want to move it? I feel like you're pushing. Do we want to do this? No. You let us know. Where do you want to go? How do you want to? I mean, lots of collaboration in those early rehearsals.
They're so chill.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I like this.
Did you go up 2 clicks as a general rule from the studio recording or no?
I did not. I don't remember exactly. I think it's when I hear where they're putting the melody, and each one of those guys has one singing right down the middle, one's on top, and one's behind, or so it's just trying to treat each one differently. Now they would sing each of their hits, 40 number one hits between the 3 of them.
Amazing. Yeah.
30 million, whatever. And so playing some of these hits with the guy, playing Bluest Eyes of Texas with Larry singing was goosebump.
But did they sing in your house?
Front porch looking in?
No, did they sing from your house though?
Jim, did you have a home concert?
Yeah.
Why?
Because back in the day, I have a story. That's why I resonate on this. Is that when the frontmen were getting started, Tim reached out to me because I was doing the VidSigs at the time, if you recall those. The white background videos, that's how you and I met.
Totally.
And they saw yours. They saw Reggie Ham's and stuff like that. So I don't know if Tim reached out to you and you pointed him my way, or maybe he reached out to Reggie. But anyway, he called me up, told me who he was. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? He's like, so, hey, we want to do a video much like you did for Reggie and Rich. And I said, okay. I said, I shoot him in my front room, man. Are you okay with that? You guys are used to high budget music videos, and I've seen the Lone Star videos where they're on glass floors and all this. I'm like, it's not that. It's my front room, and I make
it's
it
your
work.
front room looking in.
My front room looking in.
Yeah.
And we ended up shooting the video with all 3 of them, and it was one of those things that was kind of so profound, because when I moved here in 2005, I just always had this impression. I said, Courtney, my wife Courtney, I said, I just have a feeling we're going to have people of note, like artists, in our house. And that happened, I believe, in 2009 or 10, 4 years after we moved here. I mean, literally it was a night where she made all the food and everything, and catering, if you will. And Larry's trying out the pizza she made.
He's so great.
Richie's
so
asking which tie he should wear. He's asking Courtney for advice. And I'm looking at her, and Richie starts playing Amazed.
Yeah.
And, Already There, and all these amazing songs in our living room. And it's the voice. And I'm looking at Courtney, I'm like, can you freaking believe this?
Yeah.
This is in our house.
Yeah.
And
Jim, you're very intuitive. You made it happen, buddy.
I just knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that had to be fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was, I found myself back out, and still those guys, as legendary as they were starting a new band and a new project.
Yeah.
And so there were budgetary concerns. And so, it was great. They leased a bus. We weren't in a van and trailer, and that was beautiful. You'd leave on a Friday, go to Texas, play on a Saturday, be back sometime Sunday.
Yeah.
There's 3 days in town I was missing, and, they were taking care of us.
Yeah.
But I was still missing opportunities. And so long story short, it just got to a point where I felt like I was reestablishing myself from a home base, and I was missing that. I was missing some regular gigs that I had worked really hard to build up to. And some of those gigs were on Broadway, but they were coveted gigs. And if I couldn't make them, then a lot of these people are you're never here. We've got somebody that can be here.
Yeah.
Love you. We're going to call you for this and this and this. And I'm like, makes sense. Thank you. Awesome. I'm glad to be on the list. I just wasn't first call. I got bumped down, second, third, fourth.
Yeah.
I'm like, this helps me juggle many things.
Yes. Well, you're doing the podcast. Yeah. And then you're doing your home recording, which is an expectation nowadays. And I've seen your setup; it's down there. You're all Auralexed and softwared up, and you're ready to go, which is awesome. What are some of the places down on Lower Broadway that are coveted? Are there more rooms? Are some of the rooms they pay better, or there's better crowds?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes it's the shift. It could be the environment, could be the crew. So places like Old Red. What used to be Wild Horse is now Category 10.
Luke Combs' place.
Yeah. and so the pay, the opportunity with some of the bands, some of the talent that is working down there that is either does really well when they play down there, so they don't have to play 8 days a week.
No.
So they're playing there a couple times. They also have other plate spinning, which led to the frontman gig.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, man, I don't like that place. I don't want to go. I'll never go down there. It's like, man, that's great. That's fine if you can do that. But again, I see it not as an end game. I mean, it is another piece of the pie.
Yeah.
You know, it's another, so you can go down there, you can meet people, and they may be producing. And so one of the groups I work down there with, the guitar player has his own studio and works with other. I mentioned there's a producer here,
Spring
2 blocks away.
Yeah.
From here, that has kept me busy for the last 4.5 years.
Nice.
As a result of the relationship that I built with another musician doing some of those slower Broadway gigs.
Yeah. Well, so Old Red, that's not, I mean, I've been down there. That's nice. It simply seems like the kit is well maintained. It seems like more than ever, the kits are a little bit more well maintained. Back in the day, it was all Thai kits, or it was all Mapex kits,
Yep.
or it was like that, these companies. And now then there was like a Pearl period. I mean, I have my places that I love to go down there. Like when tourists come into town or friends, they want to see Lower Broadway, I always take them to Roberts. I just think Roberts is the holy grail of honky tonk. It's like you're walking into 1950,
Right.
and people are swing dancing and they're line dancing, and you got the crinkle fries, and then there's the spiders in the boots on the walls, and everybody on stage is wearing the pearl snap shirts, and it just feels so nostalgic. And then you could walk right next door, and then the entire band's playing to clicks. They got iPads and in-ear monitors, and it's like, oh my God, it's like a robo band. It's like completely different from the, it's just a different energy and vibe, and the two places are right next door to each other.
Right.
Amazing.
And I think my interest, especially one of the first places I played, is the stage.
Yeah.
And it was just been a home base for me for a long time. And I wanted to use those experiences in the early days of in-ears and different things like that as a way to acclimate to what was expected from a live drummer and a studio drummer. When I was first here in the early 2000s, I'd never played live with a click.
Yeah.
My experience in the studio was limited, but I was on the fast track to figure out what it was that I needed to do to work in Nashville. So then when I got the call to play with somebody like Billy Dean, they're like, we play to a click. Gotcha. No problem. And listen, can you learn all these songs
by tomorrow?
And yeah. And we have number charts. Can you do that? Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
Yes.
I was ready to do it. Now, it's a little bit more common. We know drummers who grew up with laptops and playing to clicks and all that stuff, but that was not common. Now I'm in a place where I'm trying to learn how to play without clicks.
Well, it's part of our thing. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Going back to that. So
Is that really happening? They're actually going away from clicks?
No. I'm just saying personally, like I'm probably more comfortable with a click than without, which it was really funny that
after 25 years of it,
you do. A lot of times you're just doing gigs, playing songs on the fly, and it's like there's no click. There's just think of the chorus, like counting off big band tunes.
Yeah.
Think of the shout chorus. Think of the melody, and like get your tempo from there. That's how I played every gig, whether it was the big band, the Brazilian, the rock band.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there was no reference. We could have played it too fast, could have played it too slow, could have been different from night to night.
Totally.
But when we listen to our heroes and our band, the bands that we love, we're like, yeah, there was no click on that. But it sounds so good.
New York. Da, ba, 1, 2. Years of
You
that.
get the feel for it.
Yeah. There you go.
You're like, what's the tempo? Nobody has time for that.
Some of those tributes. I mean, Nashville has more tribute bands between Tyson Leslie and Brian Russell Collins and all the the Nashville Drummer Jam stuff. It's like, okay, we're doing a Van Halen night, so it's like 1, 2. It's just so but I'll usually bring a little light, and I'll go red, green, off. 1, 2. So there's a reference from something, and then halfway through, I'm on the bell, ding, 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 on red, green. She's like,
You're checking yourself.
always check.
Really?
I'll check myself halfway through.
I don't think Alex did.
Alex did not. You know,
Everything was
Happened
fast.
to catch Sammy Hagar when he was here.
I did.
Earlier
I was
this
there.
year. I was there too.
Yeah, Rich, you were somewhere, and I was going to invite you to come along because tickets weren't that expensive.
Yeah.
But it was the second night that Aronoff filled in.
Yeah,
Nice.
And just hearing him play, I just knew he was running a click, and there was a couple songs when they're like, "Oh, it needs to be faster," and he's, "This is the reference." But I felt for him, and I'm like,
oh, he
There
did.
was a couple little-
He had a little like a rhythm watch or something.
He had, I don't know exactly what he had, but he had stuff running, and he had his iPad with.
Dude had
charts
to
and-
learn a 2-hour set in
Overnight.
24 hours.
Yeah. But if
Yeah.
anybody can do it, I mean,
Yeah.
it's So,
Throw him
anyways,
into the deep end of the pool, you know.
Yeah.
circling back to sorry, I'm used to hosting.
No,
so-
this is great. I
Isn't
love
it so
this.
much easier being a guest?
No,
You don't think so?
no.
Oh, I
no.
love being a guest because I'm
I
constantly.
like being no. Hey, this is fun. I like being a guest.
Yeah.
No,
No. I mean, that's an interesting concept. I mean, we can talk about that later when we get to the podcast.
But I mean, also your interview style is I'm not going to call it buttoned up because you're not a buttoned up guy, but it's more in the actor's studio. It's very like it just seems like there's certain things that you want to hit and you're very well communicated, very eloquent, and you're hitting those things. And they're more of like, this is more of like a wacky radio show where yours is like, these are time capsules that are, people are going to be like, oh, like refer to Working Drummers Podcast, episode 497, that are in these archives because you've captured these things and they're very informative and not that we're not informative, but we just do it in a wackier way.
no, I get that, and I think it changes from guest to guest.
Yeah.
It
Wait, you
depends.
think we're wacky? I don't think we're wacky. We're just conversational.
That's an
But
apt
in-
descriptor.
But his show is very, it's
it's
It has wacky moments. It depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes when Rich is on, it can get a little wacky.
well, I'm lucky you had me on 2 times, man. That's great.
we should do it like the both of us guest on his.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
I was going to say one of the things that has been beneficial about doing club gigs like on Broadway is when the band was out, when the frontman had an opportunity to open up for Alabama. It was one of the first few times, and we're playing this arenas in Texas. And they hadn't thought about like, wait a minute, they're going to bring us on this large stage. We need to have some stuff going. We're not just going to walk out there. We're not playing a small venue.
Oh, like walk-on music.
Walk on something that's going to lead into the first big song. Kick It, I think it was Lone Star or something.
Oh, got to good.
Yeah. And they're like, can you guys do something? And so the three of us, the bass player, guitar player, and I were like, yeah, no, what if we vamp on this, go back and forth, be like a 4-bar jam. And then when I do this fill, that'll be, of course, we have very limited sound check time. So we had to kind of like construct this really quickly and like, we'll do this and then that. And like, let's run it real quick for sound check. And then we'll do that. When the guys came up for sound check and we showed them what we had, they're like, that's perfect. That's amazing. How'd you guys do that so fast? I mean, not taking anything away from what these guys have done in the industry, what they've written, what they've done over the years, but between the three of us, we've learned and played thousands and thousands of songs and had to improvise and had to create on the spot. And that serves you well in those scenarios, in the studio, and other things. So I just want to put a button on that whole thing as we're referencing Broadway, Nashville, and for all the shit that it gets.
Yeah.
That's fine. But this is what I've taken from it, and just seeing it as an opportunity for growth. And how do I use those skills and apply that in other places?
Are you finding people that come into town are reticent to play Broadway?
No, I'm finding people coming to town to think that is the Holy Grail.
Really?
Yeah.
So
and
it's
I'm
been
like,
flipped on
guys,
its head. It's a highly coveted thing.
It is, but I'm like, guys, that's not the end all. It can be a
Right.
source of income. It could be a source, but you also see it as a source of experience.
Yeah.
It's like the big band gig that I used to do every Monday night. We'd walk away with maybe $10, $12 in our pocket, but the experience that I learned from it, the reading, the pressure, I couldn't put a price on it.
Yeah, Dallas Jazz Orchestra, $8. And the Collection Jazz Orchestra on the Tuesdays, $24 and
How
discount
much would
pizza.
you spend to get a lesson?
Yeah.
You know,
Do you remember your first time going down Broadway when you got here? And
as a tourist?
no, but
or
yeah,
as a
just
player?
kind of you're prospecting Nashville, and you were kind of like, these guys are on a whole different level from where I am.
Yeah, no, I think it was like 1997.
Right.
My girlfriend and I were driving down to Pensacola and we wanted to stop in Nashville. So we walked down Broadway and it was interesting, but it didn't really blow me away. But certainly when I started playing there in the 2000s, I would see other bands and I think continues to this day. I mean, it's
room to room,
But I mean,
the quality of the musicians is different.
It
very much is different. I mean, I see on the first floor at Kid Rock's, sometimes I'm like, whoa.
Good band.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I hear drummers like playing the shit out of certain Journey songs, not necessarily note for note, but like,
nice.
that's really good.
Yeah.
And that sounds really pro.
But coming from Columbus, like coming from Connecticut, it's just a different level. I mean, I guess I was
for sure.
I was a little tempered from Vegas because you had a really good quality musicianship out there as well. But, coming here, it's like, oh, these guys are good, because I mean, Connecticut, it was like, I surrounded myself with good players, but they were few and far between.
It's hard for me to answer that in a really concise way because the level of musicianship in Columbus again was still so good, but maybe not in the rock world that I experienced, but like in the jazz world, in the Latin world, in the funk world.
Yeah,
there were guys that used to play with George Clinton that were in a band that still exists now and plays like once a week, and they're some of the baddest ass musicians on the planet. But again,
the machinery doesn't exist in those kind of markets.
Yes. No.
The places to rehearse, the recording studios per capital, the tour bus companies, the whole machinery that we have.
The
here.
focus of musicianship, it doesn't exist in those areas.
And like Connecticut is like, if I lived in Connecticut, I would probably be in the best, wedding corporate circuit band in a tri-state area. That would be my goal.
It would be easier to rise to the top.
Yeah.
And you hear that. You hear people in other towns where you're like, man, they're a really good player, but there's just something missing about their touch, about their approach, about their time feel. Totally, their setup,
the it factor,
their gear. That is just like there's just something. It's like the TP stuck to the bottom of the shoe. Like it looks great. You just got to lose the
toilet paper that's
stuck to the bottom of your shoe.
Your zipper's open.
And exactly. The last thing I'll say about the transition and what inspired me was I was at Columbus Pro and Kenny Aronoff was on tour with Fogerty, and he's like, "Hey, I got a day off. Got to come in and do a clinic." So there were like literally 6 of us sitting there. Yeah. And one of the things he said, and I had the opportunity to tell him this later, and he was like, I do like 3 things really good, and I've been able to make a living at it. So I implore you, you can have 10 C- grooves or you can have 3 A+ grooves. And at that point in my life, I'm juggling all these different bands, and I was feeling a little bit of a draw to Nashville. And I'm like, that's it. I know what I want to do. I'm going to be a backbeat drummer, and I'm doing this, and I'm not getting rid of the John Riley books and the things. Still want to work on that. I want it to be a part of my personality, but I need to focus on that because I want to be a full-time player
drummer
and own a house.
Yeah.
And maybe have kids.
What did he say the 3 things were? Were they 3 skill sets or 3 beats?
I think he was referencing 3 like grooves, 3 not necessarily 3 beats, but like this is like if you want me for your I'm your dude.
Yeah.
If I mean, Erskine has stories of being in the studio and being like, I don't think I'm your guy for this track. I can suggest somebody, and we think of these players as just like
monsters,
untouchable, right?
Yeah.
And they can do
wrong.
everything.
Yeah.
But that was another eye-opening experience in a time when information was limited.
Yeah.
So he, in a sense, was telling you, chop at one tree. Don't chop at multiple.
Yeah.
Because you'll go, after a while, you'll have a forest of half-chopped trees.
And I was cool with that because
specialize in something.
I was okay with being,
I think it's wonderful to hear that even, like Kenny will throw it out there. It's like, hey, I got a day off. I'd rather do a clinic for 6 people than not do. Because I've had those where you make a booking last minute, you commit to it, and there's like 4 people in the room, and you just do it anyways. And you're just like, well, I'm working my craft. I'm, continuing my skill. I'm making a difference in people's lives. I always loved that about him, and he's still that way, which is fantastic. What is your gear, man? Do you have your alliances, your gear?
Before we go that, let me just ask real quick, and there was one thing that kind of, to your point that you made earlier, I get what he's saying, but I think there's a lot of, you still have to put air in the tank, right? You still need fuel. Cash is oxygen for any business. For anybody moving down here, you are starting a business, whether you like it or not, which means you have to have some magnitude of business acumen, definitely a good sales approach. And that's what I think made you rich, is that you understood all that. You knew you were somewhat of a master salesman. You could back it up. You had, you didn't have the clout yet. Mm-hmm. You only had the clout coming from Dallas and what you did, but you certainly had the education, but you had you had a salesmanship to you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that made a big difference. So a lot of these people that are coming in, you got to do a lot of stuff. You got to spread yourself thin, Right. It's like in the business world, like what we're doing here, we're doing everything from podcasts to lighting for, car washes to video walls. Now we're kind of getting into other spaces. We're in garage doors. We're doing everything just to sustain.
You're the art of the Renaissance.
But you have to.
Yeah.
There's until the one, it's like, how many bands did you play in one year that didn't have a scheduling conflict?
29.
29 bands. What year was that?
1999.
Right. You remember the year?
Oh, yeah.
You were playing the lottery.
Totally play. And
right.
27 of those acts do not exist anymore.
But you still had to play. You can't win if you don't play.
Two remained. Jason Aldean and
Connecticut White Bread.
Big Kenny.
Was Rushlow one of the bands?
No, in 99. No, I hooked up with him in
later.
2001.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, and there was a lot of different personalities come down. And again, like meeting you, and it's like, there's so much more than just, because I just want to hole up in my practice room.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's not that. You need to get out and see people and meet them and
press the flesh.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Grass. Networking is such a bad word, but guys, you got to do it.
What is this touch grass thing?
Yeah.
I thought it was, no. Okay.
Well, it's we all know our friend Keo. You know what I mean? It's like, I always refer to Keo because he's such a man about town. It's like, if there is a live...
He's Norm.
He's just like, if there's something at the basement east, he's going to be there. If there's something at the exit end, he's going to be there. He's going to be at the coolest thing. He might be at multiple things, and he's smart. He didn't move out to Spring Hill. He's close by. And if he hears about something last minute, he is there.
Yeah.
And that's like a great business model. And because he's never out of people's minds. He's always fresh on people's minds because he is always out supporting the community.
He is. My workaround is start a podcast.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a good pivot.
Yeah, because I have, especially as I get older, I have a hard time leaving the house. Yeah. Even if I have a gig, I'm like, what time is load in? What's my map app say?
What is that?
I got 5 minutes before I even have to walk out of here.
You're like, I'm already in my jammies and my slippers, and you want me to come down and play Mama Tried for $50 and
which version of Mama Tried?
So just to talk a little bit about Savannah Jack. I remember that they're still together, right?
The singer does maybe a handful of gigs a year.
But 15 years, that's a good, you played with them for 15 years?
Pretty much. I mean, it started as, it was Don Ellis Gatlin. He and his brother, Don and Daryl Ellis, were on Sony in the 90s. They were the band, they were the duo that famously lost to Brooks and Dunn every year.
Damn. Yeah.
Amazing singer. It started out, doing bar gigs, but then the writing, the singing between the three guys, they were kind of like a Rascal Flatts, and I was the Jim Riley of the band. I wasn't in the band, but I was the drummer for the 4-piece.
Yeah.
That eventually became a 5-piece. So it just was one of those groups that we were doing gigs, opening up for the Doobie Brothers and Vince Gill. So many amazing opportunities.
Honky tonk, state fairs, kind of a thing.
Everything. These guys love to play.
Casinos.
Would travel and then would work with an agency that would put us on and off cruise ships as the artists, the featured artists. So we weren't contracted. We'd jump on these ships. We'd perform as a band.
Yeah.
The 45 in the main theater.
Yeah.
People are like, did you bring charts for our band? No, we're self-contained.
Yeah.
We were the only ones out there doing it. So got to travel all through the Caribbean, the Italy, different things like that. So I probably stayed on a little bit too long because when you're in that close knit of a group, I don't know if you know this, if you've ever been in a band for a really long time,
for decades.
Rich, but let me tell you, no, it's like when your parents split up and you actually become closer with your father after he moves out. I still keep in touch with it. So many amazing opportunities. I can tell you one thing. Because I wasn't technically a member, they wanted for their first studio album to be like John Jorgensen on guitar.
Yeah.
David Santos on bass, who the singer knew really well. You know who we would love to have play drums? Steve Ferroni. I'm best friends with Steve Ferroni. Let's get him. So at Blackbird, there's John, David, Steve Ferroni. Yeah. And we want you to play percussion. Oh, thank you. Whatever. Great. Hey, because I didn't feel like I needed an explanation of why they got Steve Ferroni to play drums on this.
Yeah.
As we know, many of our friends who played in touring bands who, Chad Cromwell was the drummer or whoever was the drummer on
the record.
Mm-hmm. Because the goal was to get on the radio. And if it was Keith Urban, Savannah Jack, Jason Aldean, we had to compete. We had to sound just as good as you guys on the radio. So I'm like, no, it's good. The more success that you have, the better it is for all of us, including me. So that was great. Great connection with Steve and incredible experience. And then the second record we did, I was on it, still got John Jorgensen, and I'm really proud of that.
Nice.
I'm proud. But, the band went through enough compromises and had its moment on a label, got, I think, number 40 on the charts with a song, with a hit.
Top 40. I mean, Casey Kasem would be like, hey, this is great.
Right. Great experience, but it came to a close for me. And my family needed more attention. And it's not like I was moving back to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was moving back to Music City.
Yeah.
And people were waiting for me. And it took about a year to get back up to speed. And then I was rolling again.
Yeah.
Then the frontman hit, and I'm like, I've already been here. I'm missing out.
Yeah.
I gotta.
It's that classic, are you a road musician or a studio musician? And that was a big deal in 1997. Now the lines are just blurred. I mean, I'm sure guys that, I don't hear about Steve Brewster ever jumping on a bus. But for me, it's like the phone rings. If it makes sense, I just go do it,
I was interviewing Michael Grando.
Yeah.
And he goes, I love when people are like, oh, I only do live or only do studio. He goes, we're all studio musicians.
Yes.
If you get a call for a session, are you turning it down? No, you're not.
What's your setup? Are you advertising? I always ask because are you advertising your wares on Sound Better and Air Gigs and all that?
Yeah, I have. And Air Gigs has worked out okay. It's become so competitive and oversaturated that it really, what we've seen as the industry has changed and home studios are growing, it's almost like the same way you get live work. You build it upon relationships.
Yeah.
And to do a single song for a songwriter overseas or whatever is cool, but to establish a relationship with a songwriter that wants to use you constantly or a producer that has a stable of clients, that I feel makes it profitable to do that, because we all wanted to do home studios. COVID hit. We all upped the ante, took our money, whatever help we got from Music Cares or whoever, and then bought a new interface and did all that stuff.
Yeah, I should have done that.
But still, it's like, man, that's a lot of work to do this one song. I should be charging more. How much do I charge? It's this constant. And I just played for 2 hours and got so much more And so it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Hamburger and steak.
I'm sorry?
Hamburger and steak. That's what I call that.
And but it's I'd say it's about 30% of what I do now.
Yeah.
Where I know we have friends that it's probably more
80%.
like 70 or 80% of what they do. But we talk about this a lot on the podcast. We have a lot of people that are doing it more full time, and it's trying to streamline the work. Time is money.
Yep.
So how do you manage that in such a way that doing that one track goes by?
Templates, file management, all that.
All those things.
Yeah.
Because when you go to a session where you're hired as the drummer at a studio
with an engineer,
guys, we're good. Moving on. Okay, to do one more. Good. All right, moving on.
I love that.
And then you're home by 3, and you're like, man, I just did a record.
Yeah.
And maybe in a year I'll see it or hear it. Where when you're at home, you're like, yeah, I got the file. Okay, put it in here. I've got my template, but still, I'll listen to it. Did you have a chart? No chart. Okay, I'll write my own chart. And then mics. Where was that mic? I use that mic for another thing. Okay, I got to engineer. Then I got tune. I got to be more than drummer.
Doing everything.
You're doing everything. And so...
And here's your $100.
Yeah, when you're charging the same as if you were in this. So
yeah.
Every year I've given myself a little bit of a raise.
Yes.
And then establish those relationships with the producers that I spoke with Ken Coomer.
Yeah.
Not that long ago.
So Jim, we're going to have Ken on the show. He is the original drummer with Wilco.
Oh.
And now he just produces crazy mad numbers of records.
Yeah. Yeah.
We played them on the radio back in the day.
Yeah.
And I forget what
Ken Coomer, you were talking to Ken probably about recording himself, right?
Yeah.
Because I listened to the interview. It was great.
Yeah. And I think it's, no, I
why,
completely lost.
Ken, why would we be talking about you? Just because you're amazing. I mean, I love Wilco, and we love the fact that you become an amazing producer. And
well, it's all about just managing that time. Because just doing one song at a time for somebody just doesn't work out. But having those relationships with people just really kind of, again, it's like having a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So then all of a sudden that person's out of the business or leaving. You're like, okay, no, I'm still good.
Yeah.
Because it's creating a certain amount of security, because we have those friends that have gigs and it's like, man, if that artist is like, guys, I'm done.
Yeah.
You have a very radio-esque intro.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the working drummer podcast.
But I can tell you that we've had a couple people do our intro. Nick Ruffini did our intro for a while from Drummer's Resource, a good friend of mine who was in broadcasting. And then a few years ago,
the dude from Atlanta, the voiceover guy.
Jack White.
Jack White.
The drummer.
God rest his soul.
Wow.
Yeah, who just passed away.
He was Rick Springfield's original drummer.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
He battled for cancer for 10 years.
Gosh.
He was married to Peggy Bundy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he's the voice of our intro, and it's just an honor to have him.
I didn't know that because I can hear it now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to speed it up a little bit, but I'm so honored to have him.
That's amazing. We miss you, buddy. Okay.
Yeah.
So, very timely. We're celebrating 500 episodes of your podcast, Working Drummer. You started it in 2015. You've had everyone. I mean, the big dogs, your Chad Wackermans, John Robinsons,
Steve Smith,
Joel Rothmans, Cindy. I want to hear about Joel, Kenny, Nick Buda, Cindy Blackman, but you also get guys that are, doing touring productions off of Broadway or, New York cats, European cats. So tell us about the podcast.
So I have to show you all this while you're doing the camera. This is kind of worn out. I think I have some extra ones. But I couldn't find them. So this has been stuck on my fridge on the side. It's probably got grease stains on it. More than 65 episodes available.
Hey.
Working Drummer Podcast is the resource for education, entertainment, and beyond. One episode, and you'll be hooked. Rich Redmond, Jason Aldean, Sessions and Clinic. You offered a quote for me.
Was I one of your first guests?
You were one of my first guests, but we were going to Summer NAMM or Winter NAMM or something like that, and I wanted something to hand out. And this is like 2016 that this came out, and it's been sitting there, and I've got an iTunes review, got our all that stuff. More than 65 episodes available.
Amazing.
Hey, that's a big milestone.
Yeah.
50 is a milestone for
because a lot of people will hit 20 and they'll be like,
"This is work."
I'm good.
Yeah.
So this is back in the days when podcasts were rare. If you don't have a podcast, you're in the minority.
I know.
But at midnight, episode 500 posted last night.
Nice.
So when you called, I was like, this is going to be good timing. I've taken a little bit of time off during the holidays.
Amazing timing.
Very excited about it. We did not do anything big this time around. The podcast for my co-host, Zach Albetta, and I has been, again, a piece of the puzzle of what we do. He is a full-time touring musician, drummer that does musicals. He's out now with the touring company of And Juliet.
He did the Ain't Too Proud to Beg show.
Ain't Too Proud to Beg. That was 16 months of his life, and amazing player.
He's Atlanta cat, right?
Atlanta, originally from New Mexico, studied in Kansas, lived in LA for 5 years.
Yeah.
When we first met, he was moving. I thought, oh, great, I'll have like a West Coast guy. And he goes, oh, and I'm moving to Atlanta. I was like, oh man, how's that going to work? But really, after I did this the first year, he joined, and met him through Nick Ruffini.
Yeah.
And just a great fit.
Yeah.
Just, I couldn't ask for a better partner. Just that perfect yin yang. He jokes that he's the party of no, I'm the party of yes. I'm like, we should do this, we should do that. And he's like, whoa, how about we do this instead? I'm like, oh, that's a good idea.
And it seems like he gets more jazzers.
He does. And I feel like we don't necessarily pick a lane, but I think it's more organic because now he's in the musical world. He'll pull from that. I'm in Nashville. I can pull from that. But we try and not pigeonhole ourselves.
Yeah.
But I had the lead on Weckl once, and I was like, and I'd met Weckl a few times, and I thought, Zach, can you do this? Would you mind? I'd feel much more comfortable if you did it and you guys can get into the weeds with the short amount of time that he may be available. We've tag teamed a few times, but again, I feel so blessed that not only can we create a consistent episode every week based on splitting the workload, but also we're on the same page as far as remaining true to the brand, if you will, of showcasing the in the trenches drummers, the lesser known names, but still impressive body of work.
Yes.
Something that we can all take away from. It's nice to have Weckl on. It's nice to have Todd Sucherman on. But within those conversations, what can I extrapolate that is relatable to somebody that just maybe is playing on Broadway in Nashville or is playing a weekend gig or maybe at their church or whatever, to engage those listeners, those that are curious, to even the non-drummer.
Yeah.
So really casual. I love that, you're saying, describe our conversation as that, but it would try, and Zach prepares differently than I do.
Yeah.
I think I over prepare. I've
That's
got
good.
all my
Nothing wrong
bullet
with that.
points,
Yeah.
got my outline just in case, because I might have a guest that is short with their answers, and I may have to lead the charge. I may have guests that I don't get a word in edgewise, but over time I've learned to edit in the moment.
Yeah.
In other words, I think we're done with this topic.
Yeah.
Time to move on.
I call it passing exit ramps.
It's a skill set. This hosting thing is a thinking on your feet thing, and it's so good. Some people love Sudoku, some do crossword puzzles. This is how Jim and I keep our brain sharp, because you really have to jib and jab and think in the moment. And we had to get our sea legs together as far as having two people that could give and take. And
it helps that you had somebody who worked in the business.
Yeah, totally. Jim's a great coach, and then I'm a good student, and I'm sure you are, in the sense that I always go back and listen to an episode, maybe 2 times. Maybe one for enjoyment, and then one for how can I improve my hosting skills, and do I need to remove anything or edit anything on behalf of the guest?
Well, Matt, you do that, right? You probably listen to it 2 or 3 times before you release.
Well, I go through and edit and for time and, probably not too time, but it does give me an opportunity to hear when I am maybe not allowing the person to fully, finish their point or other things like that.
That happens.
So I think there's ways that definitely again, it is a skill set that I feel like has helped me, and consider it's like, what else can I be doing with this? How else? Because at the end of it, I do feel like, man, I feel like I just left a gig.
Yeah.
It feels good.
There's a lot going on up here in the head and the heart. Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is you could be a panel moderator. You can be an event host. You can create your own events. I mean, now that you have this organizational ability and you know how to cut to the chase and keep people engaged, and it's educational, but it's also entertaining. It's fantastic.
I got a lot of early encouragement from friends and different people. The very first guest was our friend David Black.
Yeah.
I thought I need to start off with somebody who just
comfortable
know him, great resume, great player, good personality, and he was just a great. And my friend Mike Jackson helped me get started, and he is in the industry as far as voiceover, things like this. So he was able to coach me with that stuff.
Totally. Yeah. Now what? Tell us about this Patreon thing. Are we missing out? What is that?
So Patreon.
Actually, talking about the monetization of it, I'm kind of curious. Have you been able to do that?
Somewhat. It took us a while to get to the point where we could put money in our pockets, but to make enough money to keep the lights on was our goal. Because for Zach and I, the money we made was for him teaching and gigs and touring. For me, it is playing and touring, recording, and all those things. So the podcast still needed to be under control so that we continue to enjoy it. But after a while, we're doing some advertising that helped. But still, you've got the website, we're on Megaphone now. That costs us a little bit to subscribe to some of these platforms. If it's gear, we use that.
When you say ad, were you actually doing ads on the show?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you still?
We still do.
Nice.
So through Megaphone, so about 3 years ago, we joined a network called the Drum Click.
Mm-hmm. I saw that. Yeah.
And so
that's got the Big Fat Five and all that.
Big Fat Five. They've recently Drummers on Drumming, I think, is the new name.
I think Ben is brilliant because
he does a great job.
He took the first several episodes, turned it into a book.
Yes, and we're having him on as a guest coming up soon. Chris Mazzarizzi is from Big Fat Snare Drum.
I love Chris.
He had the idea to do this like comedians do with podcasts. We'll start a network and we'll work off each other. So Bart Vanderzee's Drum History, which is an amazing podcast, is part of that network.
Nice.
And Drum Candy with
Mike Dawson,
thank you. And so right now, those are the ones that are a part of that. And so with Megaphone.
What's Megaphone?
So Megaphone is a distributor that when we first started, you had to do all the code on your website to get it to upload to iTunes. That now there's services that when you just dump your MP3 in there, it goes to all the streams.
It aggregates.
Like Libsyn. We use Libsyn.
Okay.
Podbean.
That type of thing. And I'm trying to think of dynamic advertising is the thing. So when you listen to podcasts and you hear a little boom, 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 and all of a sudden an ad starts because they can see that audible marker. Or sometimes it could be like Conan O'Brien and he could be in the middle of some sentence and all of a sudden it goes to
drives me up like my radio sensibilities are off the charts when it happens. It's like mid-sentence and it cuts out. I'm like, why? Come on.
That shouldn't happen.
What that is
I know that. It's dynamic ad placement.
Right. So we've got two spots that you program it in. You've got at the beginning of the episode and somewhere in the mid-roll and somewhere at the end.
Post-roll,
and each one of those spots has a certain value to that you can assign to the advertiser. So getting into the, making the donuts here, but
can you actually assign, because like, when I do a lot of podcasting for clients and stuff like that, and I'm just like, if they have an ad, I'm just baking it into the file. At some point, we got to get to dynamic ads, but in the software I use, where I'm able to actually designate the time. okay, stop here. And I might have a produced piece that ramps up. Hey, we're going to be right back. Boom. Because let the listener know you got 30 seconds. I even tell my clients, well, they could skip forward. I said, I understand that, but what if you were to prep them like, hey, this is how we pay the bills. Just make sure you're listening to these some of those words from our sponsors.
Sure.
We're going to be back in a few. Make sure you check them out. Give them some love because if you enjoy the podcast, this is how we're funding it.
It's an evolving industry.
Yeah,
that now everyone listens to podcasts.
They really do.
And as a result, we've actually seen our listenership go down because it's like there's just so much out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we now have tried to find new ways to, invigorate that and bring attention back to it because we were the only ones. There were very few out there, very few podcasts, very few drumming podcasts. Now there's more of those.
Yeah.
We're, as a result of Nick slowing down his output and some other people, we're probably the longest running podcast. And, again, 500 started. So I also feel like it's still super fun, grow so much from it. It's helped Zach and I on this episode 500 talk about, it's all in the episode. We talk about, just how it's helped our careers. It's helped our growth as drummers and as business people and just all these things. And my connections with people within the industry, whether it's playing or the retail industry, that remains intact. But it's not through somebody else's business. It's through mine.
Yeah.
And I say mine, Zach and I.
Yeah.
And so that feels really good. I feel like I own something. And one of the inspiration for starting this was like, I'm in a band, but I have no say in this. And it's like, but I'm not a songwriter. How do I want to create, I want something that's mine that I own. And so that was kind of the start of that.
You actually, looking at your Instagram page, are you guys doing clips from the episodes, like short form content, things like that? Or?
Yeah, not as much as like some of our young podcaster friends that are super tech savvy. Zach and I are always checking in with each other. It's like, should we do that? I see this and I see that. I'm inspired, but do we want to?
Because I'll tell you right now, like my radio sensibilities, to promote the other shows on the radio station. For my years in radio is spent with talk radio, always running promos, throwing back to the morning show, and hey, here's what you can expect coming up on blah blah blah. Yeah. That's what those are. Getting people a little bit of a taste that they may not have found you. It's removing the hoops. You know what I mean?
Well, and I just worked on one today for Chad Wackerman.
Nice.
And so getting back to doing that, we actually hired Dan Ainspan from the Nashville Drummers Podcast to do a bunch of clips for us.
Yeah.
So again, it's a reminder of what the drumming community is.
Yeah.
The podcasting community is. And also like some of the tech stuff that is a necessary evil. But also maintaining and managing it in such a way that it remains fun. That's why we're at 500. Yeah. Because Zach and I have put some limits on how demanding this thing is. Does it remain fun? Does it remain? And can it pay for itself? Now, in recent years, we've been able to put some money back into our pockets. But going back to your Patreon is, it's crowdfunding at its core.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, but Patreon has grown and it has changed with the industry as people are, like, wow, I can do this. I have computer, I have internet, I can create my own business. I can create my, it's endless, the opportunities to create whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Patreon is one of those things that has come as a result of this changing industry.
And it's like, again, going back to how I coach clients in the podcast space is, coming up with rate cards and stuff like that and different things that you can do to make it affordable for one business versus another, identifying those audiences that make sense. Yeah. Because there are a lot of people, I could do the dynamic ads that are controlled and they'll get a couple of points on it. But at the end of the day, it's like, they could start dictating what they want you to talk about and all that kind of stuff. And it's typically not a good place to be with certain kinds of podcasts. In this case, you're kind of talking about, the kind of identifying the advertisers that make sense for a drumming podcast would be what? It would be, You got national reach, so you could appeal to maybe some insurance companies, things of that nature. Coffee, style brands, those fashion brands. I'm not exactly sure if you're going to have drum manufacturing companies clamoring for advertising.
But they are
really
because they have an advertising budget. In a print market that was always their MO, is going away. Yeah. So they still have the budget that needs to be used somewhere.
Yeah.
And when you have like an in-ear company that doesn't get a lot of visuals, they need testimonials.
Right.
They need that. So a lot of times we're guinea pigs with stuff.
Yeah.
Or we're the beneficiary
of
Forks
a piece of gear.
Forks will advertise with, I believe, Nashville Drummer Podcast.
They advertise with us for quite some time. But there's just so many different ways. And because of the dynamic advertising, you can do it by region.
Yeah.
You can do it by So JC reached out to us about the Music City Drum Show.
JC Clifford. Yeah. What's up, JC?
I've actually, you were there, right? This past year.
Yeah.
Just talk about community.
Yeah.
Because I was actually set up with my own podcast. You were out of town.
Yeah.
And, it's something that you and I should probably at least try and make an effort to be there.
Get a booth this year.
If possible.
Yeah.
Because I talked to JC and I can't remember the guy's name.
I'll be home. I'll be home for that Sunday. But yeah, we should check on getting a booth.
We can get a booth and maybe I can just have a presence there. And, but I mean, JC and I, the guy who
Landon Hall.
Landon. Yes. Thank you. Sorry, Landon.
Yeah.
They are talking about making like a podcast row. And I've suggested that. I said, get partnered with one of these drum booth sponsors.
Oh, see, we were there year one.
Were you?
I was like, I can't. And we had a couch and we had people sit down.
But it's got to be hermetically sealed, right?
Oh, it's just,
I was able to do it.
Yeah.
I was able to.
It was noisy as heck.
Oh my gosh.
We were there, but we weren't going to record anything. But what we were going to do is we had our chiropractic friends that.
What's his name?
Cheyenne Ghaffari.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's been on another podcast that I produce, Ales and Tales.
So he, it's one of those things where we were able to like bring, it's like that was kind of our excuse to be there and share this service and build community. And a lot of times we do stuff in this industry where we're not really quite sure what the end result is. It's not going to be cash in your pocket at the end of the day, but it's going to be just a little
down the line, a
little bit down the line. And again, it's just, you got to constantly be doing things. And so, we were talking about like, how do people know who you are? Mm-hmm. Keo, what a great example. Yeah. It's like
grassroots marketing at its finest.
When I tell people that I'm an introvert, they're like, really? But you do a podcast. I'm like, I know, but that's how I work around.
I never see you as an introvert. Let me tell you this. I'm sorry being rude. I was just texting our friend Luis Espaillat.
Luis Espaillat, former guest on the Working Drummer podcast.
He's, because drummers love Luis, and he's just a drummer's best friend. Great guy. Listen, I'm learning so much. Congratulations on 500 episodes. WorkingDrummer.net. Anywhere there's podcasts, you can get the Working Drummers podcast. We're going to do the Fave 5. Fave color.
Blue.
So fast. Everybody loves blue. So many drummers. But do you have blue drums?
No, I don't now. My first DW, my first pro kit was a royal blue DW.
Ooh, royal blue. Favorite food or dish?
Oh, man, my wife says anything pureed.
Pureed, like baby food. Okay,
green
sorry.
Smoothies.
Yeah, like Joey eating the baby food.
Yeah.
What's up, Luis? What's up, buddy?
Come on in.
You're up next.
Let's fight.
You're up next.
Should we put him right here?
We can sit down, man.
Sit down, my friend. We're wrapping up.
But we don't have a microphone for you, but something tells me you're loud enough.
Thank God we don't have a microphone for him.
This is a first. What's up, buddy? How are you? So we're doing the Fave 5. So yeah, what would be your favorite dish or favorite food?
Probably eggs.
Eggs are the nature's multivitamin.
Yeah.
I'll have 4 a day.
Let me ask you this though: can you eat 4 a day?
4 a day.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they said that it's bad for you.
Nope. That has been debunked.
Really? So I should eat more eggs.
Eat 4 eggs in the morning and a whole avocado, and you will be crushing this paleo thing.
I've got tuna fish and canned chicken.
It's incredible. Jim, oh my God, you're going to be bench pressing
a couple
us.
eggs in there. You're good.
That's right.
Favorite drink?
Oh, coffee.
Coffee?
Yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then these last two are so hard, and Jim hates me for asking this, but what is your favorite movie of the moment or of all time?
Gosh.
Like this sucker comes on and you're like, sorry, babe, I'm going to be here for 2 hours.
Or at the moment.
Yeah, it could be at the moment. Like some people are like Step Brothers.
Yeah.
Or some people are like Jaws.
Infinity War.
Movie
Endgame.
that I've seen multiple that I will watch every time is probably Saving Private Ryan.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot not watch that.
Do you get
incredible.
teared up at the end?
Only
Tell me
once.
I
My
led a
dad and I
good
watched
life.
it together for the first time, and at the end, he was like, "Oh, it's a good movie."
I'm not crying.
Yeah, let's turn on to go in the other room. Yeah, me too.
Let's turn on the football game. What's your favorite song of all time or something that you're digging right now?
What I'm digging right now is Rosanna,
Yeah.
and just trying to get back into wrapping my head around that.
Flugga de boom.
The halftime.
As a huge Porcaro fan and not a Toto fan.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. But definitely.
This is big. I mean, this is controversy in the making. So you're not a fan of their body of work overall.
Not compared to some of our friends that worship the entire
But what are some
canon.
bands that you freaking love?
Well, I mean, grew up listening to Rush, and so, all that.
Okay,
that
so
stuff.
Jim, go.
What? What am I
The
doing?
question.
The question. So if you had to pick a tribute band for the rest of your life, you cannot do anything else.
Yeah,
What tribute is it going to be?
Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Yeah,
off the
Paul
top.
McCarthy.
Because
I get
we did
mistaken
a
for him all
tribute
the
show.
time.
We did a tribute show at Third and Lindsley.
Yeah.
And at the moment with the band Savannah Jack, and we were playing a ton of McCartney, and we'd go in, play Broadway, and open up with Jet and Band on the Run and stuff like that. And everyone over 35 was like, "Yay!" and everybody else was like,
Who are these guys?
Who's this guy?
It was so fun to not only play Ringo's parts and Abe Laboriel Jr. and try and copy what he was doing. I'm like, I could do this for the rest of my life.
Nice.
I was in a James Taylor tribute band for a minute last year.
Fire and Rain.
Yeah.
The Kunkelfels.
Who would have thought to do that?
That was amazing because you're covering everybody from,
Carlos
Russ
Simon.
Kunkel,
Yeah.
Gad,
Steve
Carlos.
Jordan, Carlos Vega.
It's I mean, my heroes, literally my heroes. I think I have an aversion towards being in a tribute band of bands that I really, really love, because then I'm like, I would hate this by the end of it.
We'd kill it
But
for
seriously, I mean, McCartney it covers so much from the rock to the 60s rock to all throughout.
We need more Journey tribute bands, really.
Do we?
Totally.
Yeah.
What?
Being totally sarcastic. Matt, what's the best way for people to find you? Do you personally have a .com?
MatthewCrouse.net.
Nice.
It sorely needs to be updated, but I think that it's hard to say. Social media is in a weird spot right now. Again, that's what I love about the podcast.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me personally through the podcast, as they have Zach too, not just for their podcast needs, but for drumming and personal and other things like that. So I love that. So workingdrummer.net.
Yeah. Great.
Nice.
Hey, you have been a fantastic guest. I mean, your hosting chops are sharp. 500 episodes, but isn't it nice just to let your guard down and just be like, yeah, man.
It is, man. I have not unbuttoned this shirt.
That's
in
a great
so
shirt.
many years.
That is a great Western-inspired shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Matthew Crouse, MatthewCrouse.net. Also check out WorkingDrummer.net. You can patronize the site. You could give them a little money for their time and their efforts and their talents. 500 episodes is a major commitment. Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
And you're a backbone of the drumming community here. It's just a pleasure to know you, and I'm so happy for you, man.
Thank you, man.
Dude,
it's an honor
thanks.
to be on here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you for your time and talent, buddy.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Hey, and I do want to say, this jacket that I'm wearing, everybody knows I'm a sucker for dead cows, very thin dead cows. This is a company called Last Wolf, and my friend Rob Ricotta, he's a drummer. He opened up for us a couple of years ago with John Morgan. What's up, John? And he was nice enough to get me this coat from this company, and it even embossed my initials on the jacket. So I just want to say,
Nice.
what's up, Rob? Just want to say, what's up, Last Wolf? I really like this brown bomber jacket that you have, and there's also a brown cafe racer jacket that you guys have. But anyways, guys,
Hey, there's this company called DW. I really like your drums. They sound really good. There's this one drum set that apparently you got the wood from Lake Superior. I mean, come on.
I don't know. I think they're sold out of that, Jim.
Or whatever happens next.
All the doctors and the lawyers buy those. The guys that make big time bucks buy those kits, right? Totally. Hey, so guys, thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting the show. Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review. It helps people buy and follow the show. And buy this. This is my book here, right here. Crash Course to Success.
These are all the things supposed to put on the front end.
I know, but this is you're like, hey, just promote this stuff. Look at this. I'm a drummer with a product. There's my practice pad. Buy the practice pad. It's made in America. Yeah, go to Starbucks.
And check out the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast.com.
That's right. And it's just like George Burns used to say. They say, hey, George, what does your doctor think about you smoking 10 cigars a day and drinking copious amounts of whiskey and chasing young women? And he said, I don't know. He's dead. We'll see you next time, folks. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
This has been The Rich Redmond Show. Subscribe, rate, and follow along at richredmond.com/podcasts.